Hello, everyone, and
Mm,
welcome to another episode of Dojo Live this Tuesday, December 6th, 2022. My name is Kim Lantis, and it's my pleasure to be co-hosting along with America Guerrero.
Hello, it's been
Hi.
1 week, I think,
I
since I was.
know last
Yeah,
week
it's
was a bit
weird.
of a slow week on Dojo Live. It happens. But you know what? We're going to kick it off. We're going to reignite the energy here with Slav. Slav, it's so nice to meet you today, and thank you for joining us on Dojo Live.
yeah, thanks for having me.
Yes, Zholudev. I hope I got that all right. You are the
Yeah,
co-founder
pretty much.
and good, yes. The co-founder and CTO at Sumsub, joining us all the way from Germany today. What time is it for you?
It's 7 p.m. right now.
Okay, so
Not too late.
not too late, right? Just in time to wrap up your day. So thank you so much for that. We're definitely looking
Sure.
forward to today's show because it's timely. It's all about what's happening in this new year coming up, 2023, and something that's pretty important to almost every single tech company out there, and that is verification. But before we get into the trends and opportunities and challenges that are coming up in 2023, we would like to get to know you a bit better. Slav, if you could please tell us just a bit about your personal story, your passion, and what sort of led up to your time with Sumsub. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. So I guess I will start with like 15 years back when I just moved to Germany to pursue my PhD in computer science. And 4 years later, I was deciding what to do next, right? Because I kind of loved the freedom of research, but at the same time, I saw lots of problems in this area. At the same time, I was always a hands-on guy, so I really liked programming. So I was thinking about industry, right? So luckily, I found a golden middle, so to say. So I found a company which is called ResearchGate, based in Berlin. It's a social network for scientists. And for me, it was a perfect opportunity to contribute to science and at the same time being hands-on and code and be in the industry.
Love
And
it.
I think I was one of the first engineers there. And during like the 7 years, like 6, 7 years I've been there, it grew to 250 people. So for me, it was a nice opportunity to observe how a small company transforms into something bigger, how chaotic processes or absence of them actually go into something really meaningful and more organized. Also, I learned lots of in the tech field and big data and machine learning. Of course, it was not my first job, but however, that was the most, let's say, fruitful one for me in terms of skills. But at the same time, I connected with the co-founders of Sumsub. They were like friends of mine, right? And they were building actually back in the day the anti-Photoshop software. So basically figuring out whether the image was tampered or not, where the editing pieces of the image were, right? So I was kind of consulting them, but then when things started to move more seriously, so to say, I decided that it's time to move on, find something new, and I joined them, and that's how we started.
That's a beautiful story. It's lovely. So let's talk specifically about Sumsub. Who are you as a company? What's this problem that you're solving?
Okay, so now we are not anti-Photoshop software company anymore, right? But
Applying those learnings to something else.
yeah, so now how I call it, it's just one-stop solution for your compliance and anti-fraud needs when it comes to user onboarding and then managing the full user life cycle. We kind of officially started with the KYC onboarding when we were verifying users, but then at some point we realized that it's not enough. And I hope we'll talk about this today as well. All right, so I'll just give a simple example. When you, for example, want to open a bank account here in Germany, of course, in some cases you have to go to the office and fill in papers, but the so-called progressive banks, they allow you to do everything online. So you upload your ID document, you upload like your selfie, take a selfie, right? In some cases, when things become a bit trickier, if you, for example, citizen outside of European Union, you have to provide a proof of address that you live here and things like that, right? But then when user was onboarded and account is gotten, it's just the beginning of the story because user starts to transact, right? Make some transactions, Right? Some of them could be fraudulent, some of them could not, right? So there is also a challenge to stay compliant, also protect your users from fraud or your business from fraud, right? And that's what we do. So, I mean, there are lots of variables in this equation, but we try to solve this very complex equation.
Yeah, I can completely imagine the complexity. You mentioned, if you're from outside of the European Union. In my particular instance, I'm from the United States. However, I live in Mexico. I'm a permanent resident of Mexico. I've been here for almost 20 years. And when it comes to this, and I think we can get into this later, but I can completely relate because it's absolutely impossible for me now to open a bank account in the United States because I do not have a physical address in which I reside in the United States. Like, I'm a US citizen. I have my passport. I make an income. I actually need a bank account because
pay taxes.
yes, it came down to trying to cash a life insurance check, which I have yet to cash because it's in dollars. I can't get it cashed in Mexico, and I can't set up a bank account in the United States to get it done. So it's like, what's going on?
Yeah, I know your pain. I know your pain.
So yes, so there's obviously the good sides of KYC, the criticisms or the drawbacks, and coming to your topic of today of why it's no longer sufficient. So I think this is a really good segue. America, what specifically are we talking about today?
Yes, today we're going to talk about trends, opportunities, and challenges of the verification industry in 2023. So the question is, how is the verification industry evolving? And why is simple KYC no longer sufficient to protect from fraud? So could you please give us a high level about this? Why did you choose this topic?
Because we are seeing transformation in our area right now. I can talk about this a little bit later about the particular examples. And I mean, the business of KYC and this online user verification is relatively new. And like technologies change, right? And then also the regulations change. Also, like crypto emerges, and then suddenly governments realize that they need to control it more for obvious reasons, right? So therefore it's yeah, really challenging. So I thought like we implement this or that thing and life will get easier. No, actually life gets more and more complicated. I mean, in terms of like products that you're building, the challenges that you are solving.
Yeah, and I think that's interesting. If we can pull back very quickly at just as we set the stage as to why KYC is no longer sufficient, what is KYC in terms of as it stands today and kind of high level and what needs to be changing?
KYC stands for Know Your Customer, and that's exactly the example with the opening bank account that I provided. Basically, you verify, you onboard users, and then you give access basically to your service. So you decide, okay, I can trust this person, I meet all the regulatory requirements, and this user is able to use our service or the company's service right now. Honestly, KYC itself was never enough for staying from fraud, but now this challenge is even bigger, I guess, because, for example, deepfakes are really emerging right now. Like even like a couple of years ago, it was like super hard, I guess, to create a realistic deepfake, and you need to be an expert in this area and probably have really good rendering machines. And nowadays, like you have your smartphone, you click the button and
Those
you get
filters are freaky.
yeah, exactly. So there are new challenges about like deepfake, but then also let's say the situation in the world is changing, and there are lots of sanctions, and where sanctions there are also money laundering, right? So and the fraudsters find new and new schemes how to circumvent sanctions, or for example launder money. And for example, NFTs, right, is a relatively new thing. So you can, for example, buy an NFT for $600, and then suddenly, like 1 minute after, you sell it for $1, right? Suspicious, right? So you need to control this aspect of, let's say, post onboarding yourself, right? Because fraud happens not only during onboarding, but also during the customer life cycles and life cycle. And there are lots of reasons, or let's say techniques, or techniques how it can be done. It could be, let's say, hack account, it could be sold account, it could be even social engineering, right? So you really need some tools that monitor transactions or user actions later on, and have some means of, let's say, verification in the middle. For example, you're transacting and suddenly some transactions become suspicious. Maybe you need to pass a liveness check again, and then meaning that making sure that it's the same person sitting in front of the computer that was onboarded a while back. Right. So, and this transactional monitoring is a big thing right now, especially because crypto is emerging as well.
Yeah.
And it's a little bit more anonymous, but then with this KYC and the central currency exchanges, crypto exchanges, also thanks to KYC, it's not that anonymous. Right. Some people like it, some of them not, but these are typically the requirements from governments.
Yeah.
And before, like when you're talking about this transactional monitoring, before, like even like 3 years, 5 years ago, there were no proper solutions. So every company was trying to do this themselves. But since it was not their main area of business, they were probably not really building it diligently, or never had time for it, at least in most of the cases, right? Now those tools are emerging, and especially in our case, since we start with KYC, now we have this KYT, this Know Your Transaction, transactional monitoring. I believe our advantage is that we can marry these two things and, for example, utilize signals for finding suspicious transactions that we got during onboarding, and then later on apply some KYC techniques to resolve suspicious transactions. Again, the example of a liveness check that I provided.
Right. And the liveness check, I think it's fascinating, but at the same time, it's not necessarily even foolproof, in the sense, like, for example, I utilize my husband's Amazon account often because it's his name. He's the one who has the Prime. I want to make a purchase, so I log in. He knows I'm logging in. I'm going to use my own credit card or whatever, and it's legit. But obviously, I'm not my husband. I'm going to look very different from what he looked like when he was onboarded. So then it's like, oh, these are authorized users, or whatever that might actually look like, right? I can see why, just, we've talked about this before on our shows, like the bad guys are continuously inventing new ways. And so the good guys have to be continuously inventing new ways as well. So let's just talk about that in terms of trends. I understand that, you at Sumsub have, done some findings, some key findings from fraud reports from 2022. And then what does that look like then as we anticipate shifting into 2023? So let's start with 2022, maybe. What have we found?
Unfortunately, we didn't find that things are getting better. Things are getting worse in terms of fraud. And again, the reasons for it is that, like, let's say crypto is more prominent, and then people are finding new ways to circumvent sanctions. Also, the technologies also evolving, meaning that, like, for example, making those deepfakes have become much easier. Also, regulators inventing new regulations, and they're probably, or sometimes even the full KYC is not required, but companies, since like now we're in the crisis mode, kind of, lots of companies, right? So they care more about user conversion rather than, like, let's say, security. So they are kind of interested in onboarding as many users, and sometimes, like, under certain circumstances, even providing your document is not necessary. So you can basically verify your phone, like enter your first name, last name, date of birth, and that's okay until you transact under $1,000. Yeah, so for those three main reasons, I think fraud is emerging, but it's always cat and mouse game, right? So please go ahead.
I have a question. Do you need to be necessarily a big company to get access to this platform to use it, or it could be for a personal use?
With Sumsub, and in the sense of, like, who's your client, who are you helping? Is it individuals or is it B2B?
Exactly.
Yeah, we have a actually self-serve mode where you can just go and sign up and register and get access to basic functionality, just simple KYC, meaning ID plus liveness. But at the same time, you have to be a company, a registered company, and during 7 days, we ask you to provide certain documents to make sure that your business is legit, and then you have all necessary documents, and or you have a website, or you will have a website that you're in some corporate registers and things like that. So I'm not a lawyer, but no, actually, of course, like when you're dealing with personal data, you kind of just sign up and collect somebody else's ID. So we take this due diligence very, very seriously, and sometimes maybe even too seriously. That some companies like that, for example, just got registered. They didn't put up their website, but they already want to build something and roll out within 1 month. Sometimes we kind of block them, and then they have to explain that they're actually everything's under control and then everything is clean.
Very good. So, I mean, and I think that makes sense. So we're focusing obviously on the B2B, the business side. We're seeing that fraud isn't getting better in 2022. But what does this mean for 2023? What should these businesses, users of Sumsub or likewise, be looking toward? What's going to be happening? What are their clients, their users expecting versus what are the regulations that are going to be coming up, and how can we deal with that?
Okay. First of all, I guess the simple thing that I already mentioned, the simple thing to explain are deepfakes, right? So, there will be a battle between technologies, and therefore, actually, now you see lots of startup emerging that like focusing just on this particular topic. But moving forward, I think the regulators, they also realize that despite of the classical document-based KYC, meaning when you need to upload a picture of a document, is not enough. Some countries are super strict. So, for example, Germany, where I'm located, they require you a call with a real person, and then they check, and there is a video stream, and then they check that the holograms on this document. Of course, it's very bad for business, I think, in terms of conversion, because personally myself, like I want to open one bank account and I need to have a call. I said, no, later. And you can imagine that lots of people just go. But these are regulations, and the companies registered in Germany and in Austria, they have to follow those rules. For other countries that don't have such a requirement with a video call, they also realize that despite the number of KYC providers out there, still the fraud is growing. So they are requiring you, for example, to check against some government database, right? So that the data are really correct. And sometimes those databases also contain faces of people, right? So that you can compare your liveness check against that face. It doesn't help against the nicely deep fakes, but at least like if the person is real and then the all data match from the database, you can be much more sure that this person is there. And at the same time, amount of those databases that you can get access to is also growing. Of course, you need to pass some sort of due diligence, but then some governments just open up the gates for the company like ours. So therefore, it's a new trend of, let's say, documentless or one-click verification, which will be as it is, or maybe in addition to the classical KYC. That's another big trend. And at the same time, and probably the last important trend that we're seeing is that the KYC information can be reused maybe in the future. There are lots of legal aspects to it, but sometimes there is a crypto exchange, and then there is an on-ramp solution that kind of integrated into this crypto exchange. You buy some crypto for fiat money, you pass KYC, and then you have to pass KYC at this crypto exchange again, right? Kind of, it feels like the same service for a user, but then they have to pass KYC twice. This is kind of also a conversion killer. It's frustrating for users, also two-party space. So it's basically drawbacks for everybody. So we're contemplating, like thinking about the ways how you can, of course, legally make sure that the user can own their data and share them only those pieces that are needed this particular company. So it will be a big thing, maybe also starting next year. I mean, it's already started actually. And then in the next 5 years, I think it will be a big thing.
Thank you. It's super interesting. I think we can come back to those specifics in just a few minutes. But before we do actually have a live question from a member of our audience.
Yes, the name is Margaro Sanchez, and the question is, how many authenticate methods are recommendable to have in order to be considered as safe?
Safe. There are two parts to it. One being compliant. And I mean, if you're not compliant, your business is in danger because the bank can withdraw, not the bank, the regulator can withdraw your license, right? And this depends on the country, on the nature of business, and there are lots of variables into it. Consider safe. It's also a tricky question because there is no simple answer to that because it depends also on the, let's say, industry, on the country, and the risk profile of your users. But lots of companies, when they can, they utilize the this IDV, identity verification, ID document plus liveness check, proof of address sometimes is needed, some sort of utility bill, but this is rather for compliance reasons. It's very hard actually to process those documents, and this is a conversion killer, unfortunately. But if you want to be for super, let's say, sensitive scenarios, a video call with an operator is required. So, for example, you lost access to your bank account, right? And then you have lots of money there. You don't want to just rely on simple IDV. You probably want some more secure things. So, for example, call with an operator is the key here. So, depending on the use case, audience, no simple answer. Sorry.
No simple answer, sorry, like most things in life, right? But let's turn it back real quick to Sumsub, and this, I've heard you mention this many times, and of course this is going to be very important to any business, and that is the conversion killer, right? To try to strike this balance between great verification that doesn't, of course, hinder the end user who's like, oh, screw this is so complicated, I'm not doing this, or even I think give us the sense of doubt, right? Because I think there's, for me at least personally, there's those two things. Like number one, I'm like, as we say here in Spanish in Mexico, que flojera, right? Like, ugh, like I'm not doing this. Like I don't feel like it. I'll do it later or whatever. And then the two is, why do they need to know this in this raisings of suspicion when it's actually something that's meant to protect you, but it can actually feel like it's achieving the opposite. So how does I know that's a big intro, but my question is, how does Sumsub play into this? How is your product therefore kind of going through all of these loops to prevent the conversion killing, but still getting the verification?
Yeah, there are some things that probably don't depend on us too much because they also depend on the service. So a user needs to have a strong motivation to pass KYC. I mean, if you just want to play some game and then suddenly you ask for a passport, then probably, I mean, there's no go. Only a few people will go for that. And the second thing is actually education. People are getting more and more used to those verifications, and even like my friends that are even non-technical, they know what KYC is. I was actually recently surprised that I keep hearing that sure they kind of know what it is, right? So, and it will get better and better. So people will ask less and less questions, and then of course they will trade convenience for let's say anonymity. I mean, it's already started a long time ago when we started to use social networks, and it will be even worse in this respect, right? But the uploading documents, I think it's not the biggest challenge, at least for us, because I mean we cannot like really affect the motivation of the our initial service. But what we can do, we can build we're building a service that don't decline users just for nothing, right? And that's the biggest challenge, because I mean, there are a variety of the documents in the world that you can process, and also sometimes the lighting conditions are not good, and sometimes people using like maybe cheap Android phones, right, with really bad cameras, where it's impossible to make a good photo, right? And then we kind of sort of yeah, so that's what we're guilty. So that's what we're seeing, and being able to process those documents, even like in all of the countries, and all types of documents, is very, very crucial. And not only process and extract data from them, but also know all the security features of those documents, like the type of phone they're using and things like that. Because I mean, when it comes to Europe, for example, it's relatively easy. The documents pretty too much look alike, right? But when it comes to India, let's say, or Brazil or Nigeria, they have like paper-based documents that, for example, are easily damaged. So over time, they're getting damaged, and some of them contain black and white pictures, photos on them, and it's very easy to glue another picture on top of it. So those documents are not secure at all. But still, you need to be able to process, and of course, you don't want to let in fraudsters, but at the same time, you want good users in. So that's the challenge. And since now businesses are becoming more and more global in nature, especially crypto businesses, right? Because I mean, people are using crypto all over the world, but also banks and other fintech organizations. It's becoming more and more important to understand not only European documents, for example, or US driving licenses, but the documents all over the world. And of course, the companies that pick the KYC provider, they also don't want to connect to 10 different ones that are good in this particular region. They just want to have one-stop solution. And therefore, I think that's where we shine, because we started with the complicated cases, and then it was for us just an easy exercise to say work well with European documents. So that's the part where KYC provider is can shine, or actually lose the let's say the trust.
I think that's super smart in terms of your own business approach, right? As using the examples that you just laid out, like if you can tackle Nigeria, then Europe should be a breeze, right? So I think that approach of sort of looking at things a bit backwards, right, is very, very smart. So we're come up to the final few minutes of our conversation today. And exactly, we wanted to kind of, what else in terms of Sumsub differentiates you as a company? And I think specifically with your company culture, what as a co-founder, what have you learned, and what are you establishing as a team that maybe other companies and leaders might want to emulate?
Before you answer that, can we relate this question, but with why your logo is a bulldog with pixels, or is it different? Is that what I'm thinking?
It's a bulldog with pixels, right? Initially, it was from Sherlock Holmes, and Sherlock Holmes, it's dog, right? And then we made it more like pixelated to kind of stress out that we're in the digital world, and that's how it was, born.
Yeah, I love it. The investigation, right? The KYC, what this looks like on a global scale, Nigeria versus Germany, right? Which seem to be two of like the very big extremes, right? And everything in between. So perfect. I love the origin story, the Sherlock Holmes connection. I think it's beautiful. What are you creating? What is the culture like at Sumsub?
Yeah, when we talk about the company culture, I mean, it's very hard to define. I mean, everybody is talking about it, and of course, everybody is dreaming about being open and like communicate honestly and all this stuff. And I believe we do have this, but I just probably want to emphasize a couple of things that maybe not every company has, right? So in our company, everybody can become the one who he or she wants to become. And I give you a couple of examples. Like I think 3 or 4 years ago, I hired a very junior tech support engineer, right? So he was responsible for answering questions of the clients, maybe just reading documentation and answering them. Now he is the head of the whole internal development team at Sumsub, and he's managing a team of 15 people, and he knows the product, one of the best person in our company, and can also go to the client's call and maybe sell or maybe explain better. So that's one example. Another example, we had a girl who was annotating data for machine learning algorithms, and now she's in the quality assurance department, and not only testing by hands, but also developing her skills in the automation, the automated QA, right? So this is just a couple of examples how people that they were hired in one position, but they went pretty far. And I think it's very important, and I think the key to that is actually give people responsibility. And that's actually why I didn't want to hire quality assurance engineers at first, because I didn't want developers to relax and rely on QA people, right? So they were relying on their own development and the peer reviews from their colleagues. At some point, I surrendered, so now we have a QA department. But nonetheless, I believe that giving responsibility to people is a key thing there. And also, I'm searching for people that also want to have fun at work. I know that not everybody is like that, and some people have strict separation between personal life and work, and that's great. That's okay, right? But my belief is that since we're spending most of the time at work, at least normal people, right, it's very important to have fun at work. And if you don't have fun at work, then just not about us.
Yeah.
I guess.
What are you doing there then? Yeah, I love it. Is there any particular way in which Sumsub is sort of facilitating that ability to learn and grow as an individual? I mean, I think a lot of it comes from our own initiative, right, and the desire. But what sort of have you done to help make that type of growth accessible?
I guess sometimes indeed giving this responsibility, and even more than person is able to cope at the moment, but then I'm just observing how this person copes with this. And there are many people working at Sumsub. I see that they want to develop themselves, and therefore they push it forward, and they actually like when I push them forward, when I give them something that they have no clue how to solve, but they learn to figure out how to solve this, right? And I think it also comes from myself, and when I believe that at some point you need your team's success is your success. So you should let it go and be happy when people that are surrounding you are better at the things that you were very good at before, but now they're even better, and you're not jealous, but rather very, very happy. And when it comes, then I think people see it, and then they want to come to you and learn. And it's kind of was a chicken and egg problem, and now it's a self-healing process. I would say not self-healing, but how you call it. But you got my point.
Yeah, it's like a self-growth or reproduction. Yeah. I get your analogy. I'm not doing any better trying to figure it out either. But what I am hearing is this idea of setting up challenges in a safe space, right? Like, I'm presenting you with a challenge, but I think what you've done is successfully remove the fear of failure, which doesn't mean that failure isn't going to happen. It's just it's okay. Yeah. It's part of the challenge. And I think that's a really beautiful environment to be working in.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Vyacheslav, for your time today, for presenting Sumsub to us and what's in future for KYC, what we can all expect, and the challenges presented for 2023 to keep that in mind. And it's awesome that there are providers like yourselves who help sort of take that overwhelmingness, right, away from others, so they can focus on their core capacity, right? Their core idea of what their core business. Exactly. Thank you so much, and especially that this is the end of your day, your evening. It was a pleasure to spend it.
Yeah, it was a pleasure to be here. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Perfect. Stick around for just a minute as we go off air. But before we do, we'd like to share what we've got coming up on Thursday.
Yay! On Thursday, we are going to have a conversation with Montana Butch, founder and CEO at the company Spotivity. The topic is going to be about spot your activity, develop your passion, achieve your goals. How does data and creative thinking superpower team decision making?
Yeah, all about teens, Gen Z, we're right up.
Yeah.
All right, perfect. Thank you again, Slav. Have a great rest of your day, everyone, and we'll see you Thursday, 10 o'clock Pacific. Bye for now.
Thanks.